Canada, calm, polite, rational Canada, rarely makes international headlines for drama. But during the height of the Trump era, when U.S. politics were defined by chaos, trade wars, travel bans, and Twitter tirades, even America's friendly northern neighbors started feeling the pressure. Suddenly, the world's most stable relationship, the U.S. and Canada, was showing signs of strain. Tariffs on Canadian steel, attacks on NAFTA, petty insults directed at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And behind closed doors, Canada found itself scrambling for allies. Because when Trump went too far, diplomatically, economically, and politically, Canada needed support. And surprisingly, it got it from all over the globe. In today's video, we're exploring 10 countries that stood by Canada, supported it behind the scenes, or publicly backed it when Trump turned up the heat. Some of these alliances were old and trusted, others unexpected, even shocking. But all of them had one thing in common. They reminded Canada that it wasn't alone. 1. Germany. The new anchor of the West, Angela Merkel, might not have said it outright, but she made one thing very clear during the Trump years. The old Western alliance was changing. When Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, imposed tariffs on NATO allies, and called the EU a foe, Germany stood up, and Canada noticed. Merkel and Trudeau became quiet allies in diplomacy, climate policy, and global trade. In 2018, when Trump lashed out at Trudeau post-G7 summit, it was Germany that called for unity and respect. Berlin didn't just back Canada. It positioned itself as a co-leader in the Trump resistance coalition. 2. France. Vive la diplomatie and maple syrup. Emmanuel Macron made it clear early on, he wasn't going to play Trump's ego games. When Trump skipped environmental meetings and insulted NATO, Macron doubled down on alliances and included Canada in the circle of trust. French officials openly criticized U.S. tariffs on Canadian aluminum and publicly supported Canada's sovereignty during diplomatic standoffs. On top of that, France and Canada worked closely on climate accords and global digital policy, areas the Trump administration either ignored or abandoned. Macron even threw Trudeau some much-needed public support after Trump's infamous Twitter meltdown post-G7. Calling Canada a trustworthy ally, it wasn't just diplomacy, it was solidarity. 3. Japan, trade allies in a storm. When Trump launched his war on trade deals, Japan and Canada quickly found common ground. The two countries helped salvage the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, after the U.S. withdrew, relaunching it as the CPTPP without Washington. That was a bold move and a clear message to the world. Multilateralism would survive without Trump. Japan not only sided with Canada economically, but gave it a major platform to expand trade and influence in Asia. In essence, Japan said, "Don't worry, we've got your back," and Canada remembered. 4th, the United Kingdom. Old ties, new tensions. While Brexit had the UK tied up in its own drama, British leadership made sure to show quiet support for Canada when US rhetoric got personal. Boris Johnson may have had an unpredictable streak, but even he saw the value in aligning with Canada when Washington turned volatile. As Trump waged trade wars and questioned NATO, the UK worked with Canada to maintain military cooperation and global intelligence networks, particularly the Five Eyes Alliance. Behind the scenes, British diplomats offered support during tense G7 meetings and expressed frustration at the White House's diplomatic breakdowns. 5. Mexico, a NAFTA brother in arms. It's ironic, under Trump, Canada and Mexico, two countries that were once polite economic rivals, became something closer to brothers in arms. As Trump attacked NAFTA, slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and Mexican car parts, and played both sides against each other, Canada and Mexico quietly formed a survival alliance. The renegotiated USMCA was painful, but Mexico and Canada presented a unified front on multiple occasions to protect their workers, farmers, and industries. It wasn't just about trade, it was about holding ground against a partner who had become unpredictable and transactional. Canada never forgot Mexico's loyalty in those tense boardroom negotiations. 6. Ireland, subtle but steadfast. Ireland's role might have been quiet, but it was meaningful. Irish diplomats, known for their subtle influence in the EU, supported Canada's position during tense trade negotiations and behind closed doors in Brussels. They lobbied for EU-Canada cooperation on tech, migration, and climate, just as the US was pulling away from those commitments. Ireland also publicly welcomed Canadian companies and workers affected by US policy changes, offering everything from dual business deals to immigration pathways. It wasn't loud support, but it was loyal, strategic, and very Irish. 7. Australia, the Southern Hemisphere's northern ally. Australia and Canada have long shared a diplomatic wavelength. Both Commonwealth nations, both middle powers with big voices. During Trump's presidency, the bond strengthened. When Trump tried to undermine international organizations, Australia and Canada doubled down, co-hosting climate summits, championing refugee policy, and supporting press freedom. In global meetings where American voices were absent or antagonistic, Australia often echoed Canadian positions, and vice versa. It was one of the few alliances that actually deepened during a time of global upheaval. 8. Norway, the silent diplomatic defender. Norway doesn't shout, it strategizes. And in 2017 to 2020, when Canada came under fire from US trade policy and diplomacy, Norway used its quiet influence to back Canadian leadership in the UN on climate policy and in Arctic affairs. Behind the scenes, Norway also helped Canada rally other Nordic countries to continue shared efforts that the US had abandoned. It wasn't headline news, but in the diplomatic halls of power, Norway helped keep Canada's agenda alive and relevant. When Trump pulled out, Norway helped Canada push in. 9. India, shared strategy against superpower volatility. India's relationship with the US under Trump was complicated, but its friendship with Canada remained strong. During trade instability and immigration policy changes, India worked closely with Canada to ensure continued student exchanges, business expansion, and diplomatic cooperation. With over 1.4 million Canadians of Indian origin, cultural and economic ties mattered deeply. And as Trump's America pulled away from international norms, India and Canada found themselves working together on a new kind of multilateralism, one that didn't require Washington's permission. 10. The Netherlands, the unexpected public defender. When Trump publicly insulted Trudeau and called Canada dishonest and weak after the 2018 G7 summit, Dutch leaders were among the first in Europe to clap back. Officials in The Hague reminded the world that Canada had long been a model ally, and that undermining it for political theater was not only wrong, it was dangerous. The Netherlands continued working with Canada on trade, migration, LGBTQ+ rights, and public health throughout the Trump years. It may not have grabbed the spotlight, but to Canadians watching their government get bullied by their southern neighbor, the Dutch support meant a lot. When the quiet ones stepped up, it's easy to forget that global diplomacy isn't just about handshakes and treaties. It's about loyalty, values, and resilience when things get ugly. When Trump went too far and the US-Canada relationship was strained to its limits, these 10 countries didn't just show up, they stood up. Some did it through economic deals, others through quiet diplomacy. A few made public declarations that echoed louder than expected, but each reminded Canada that the world still believed in reason, cooperation, and yes, maple syrup diplomacy. So what do you think? Were these alliances political necessity or true friendship? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know which country surprised you the most. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Because next week we're diving into the countries that turned their backs on Canada and why. Until then, stay thoughtful, stay global, and stay curious.